In his book, The New Economics, in 1993, Dr. Deming described 4 components of what he called a system of profound knowledge. The first was appreciation of a system, understanding that processes do indeed relate into systems. And then the second is understanding variation in the systems. The third is about the theory of knowledge. How do we get knowledge out of that system by studying the performance of the system? And the fourth was psychology. It was how do the people work in that system to be motivated by that work so that they feel good about the job that they have done. So it's about their pride in work and the motivation of the workers involved in that process. We're going to talk about pursuing profound knowledge. Now again, Yoda pursued profound knowledge. He says, already know you that which you need. Many of the things about profound knowledge are already embedded in our knowledge system, but they have not been made explicit. And Yoda also said, in a dark place we find ourselves, a little more knowledge lights our way. Can we get some more understanding? Can we get deeper involved in what is going on? Clear your mind must be if you are to find the villains behind this plot. Well, the villains behind the plot are all of the different dimensions in which waste occurs in organizations. And when we look at this, we see that Daniel Kahneman's idea of thinking fast and slow, he said there's 2 ways the human brain forms thoughts and can arrive at different conditions. So thinking fast, the intuitive, emotional, automatic, subconscious, tends to make decisions based on internalized feelings. System 2 is thinking slow, and this is rational deliberating. We're calculating, logical, rational, conscious, and we're tending to make decisions based on our conscious thinking patterns. And he says 70% of the decisions are made applying System 1 logic, but the best decision makers do System 1 applied to System 2 rules. And that means that they have been looking and studying. That's a part of the normal work of the organization. So when a change happens, they can rapidly apply System 1 to the base of the rules that have been formed by the System 2 investigations. Now, Deming never defined profane knowledge, which is the opposite of profound knowledge. But what we see is that profane knowledge is exercising what I call theory opinion, or theory O for short. It's a subjective opinion replacing facts. And so instead of having objective evidence for decision making, we're making decisions based on feelings or this System 1 thinking. And so profane knowledge is surface knowledge. It's naive. It's manifest functionality. That means that you have to see it in a tangible state. It's explicit in discovery. The apple has to fall from the tree for us to understand gravity. It's linear in nature. We expect tomorrow to be like today. It's focused on using average performance. It's static in perspective. We believe that since everything is happening, it will be happening the same way forever in the future. It's ignoring the human factors. There is no psychology involved in this or interpretation of different people. It's doing what's called enumerative use of data. It's looking at all of the data rather than at the individualism that's created by the variation of the data. It's backed by tribal lore. We've always done it this way, so we'll always do it this way. It's based on common sense. I think that this is the right way. Why? Because it just makes sense to me. And mindless reflection. As I look at it, this is what I think we need to do. And rapid decision making. So these are the things that create profane knowledge. If we want to have profound knowledge of our system, our business system, we have to have the opposite set of characteristics. Now, profane knowledge creates legacy losses in a business. So we see that the Japanese spend an awful lot of time worrying about eliminating waste. So waste is any activity that adds cost or time and does not add value, or it increases risk to employees through hazardous work conditions. So Taiichi Ohno identified 3 categories of waste. Mori, no waste from bad thinking. That's irrational waste. So that comes from poor decision making. Mura, no waste from unbalanced workflows. And that's flow waste. And this arrives because we have poor integration of the working activities. Muda, no waste in work discipline. This is process waste. And that occurs because we have poor operations. And each of those wastes can occur at any of the 3 levels of the organization. So what are the performance losses that we don't consider in the organization based on these categories? So learning occurs when we encounter loss. We learn so much more from failure than we do from success. So the total cost of quality is unknown and unknowable. We don't really know, but we learn more from our failures than we do. So failure is indeed instructive. Waste is a characteristic of failure, and it is a way for us to learn. And so we have operational opportunities for doing things. So product failure, process waste, work inefficiencies, shop floor accidents, all of those are things. We also have business opportunities. We lose sales. We have profit shortfalls from our forecasts. We made bad business decisions, or there's some unexpected change in externalities that affects our business operating model. So management tends to focus on visual work, the operational things, and not on the advanced things that are not as visual. So Toyota's operational definition of waste began in the 1950s. So Taiichi Ohno asked his workers to identify different categories of waste as a first step towards eliminating it. And what happened when they did this, they identified 7 categories: defective parts, cycle time inefficiency, excess inventory, overprocessing, excessive motion, transportation waste, and overproduction. Now, if you are not in a manufacturing environment, you might find those categories of waste a little difficult to understand. How do you put them into your particular work environment? And when he heard those things, he said, you've missed the most important waste of all, human waste. The losses when people are not motivated or they're placed in the wrong position, so we don't take advantage of the capability that those people actually have or their competence. And so those 8 wastes are about 70 years old. And today we observe a whole different set of wastes. So what are the wastes that influence your own organization? It's not important to understand what influenced Toyota. What influences your organization in the language of your people with examples that they can relate to? So Taiichi Ohno said different work has different wastes. You can view office work the same as a production floor where we make things. You can have the Gemba philosophy for administrative work by identifying your administrative Gemba and its wastes. Managerial departments think they do not need supervision. They cannot see the work. It's not visual. So white-collar workers tend to get rotated out of their position every 2 or 3 years. That is why nobody is looking at what's happening with their work. After a few years in doing one thing, they move on to another position. Nobody really checks to see what they did while they were there. So I come in, I do a project for change, and then I move to someplace else. What was the result of the change? Not on my watch, somebody else has that job. As a result, they then have an opportunity to do their own project to make the change happen. So what happens as we start taking a look at this? These types of changes and situations occur when we have downward tasking. So when we have this level of control where we have the executive level, the function or business level, administrative process or operational level, we see that value is produced in the green box. This is the worker capacity for producing value. And this is where the tasks, the value producing tasks, are being done. Change projects then are coordinated above that, and change programs across the whole system from the top down. Now what happens is that work tends to expand to saturate the time that's available. So the executive team is saying, we have a strategic need for change, and therefore we're going to have this extra job. So it's easy to say, so there's very little work in the top third of the organization. The middle third of the organization has a little more work to coordinate, but most of the work falls on the people in the value-producing work. And that starts squeezing their time and making them a little bit more less efficient. But let's just say this task is not enough. Management says, we have something else we have to do. So if the first one was, we're going to put in a new IT system, the next one is, we have to change what we mean by master data. We have to change that. Again, the same process happens, and so forth. And by the time we're moving forward, what's happened is we have so compressed the work in the organization that the organization is feeling frustrated, and they're feeling like they can't do things, And this mandatory work that's been allocated down displaces the substantive high-value work that the customers are looking for, and it creates friction in the overload condition. It in the workers' tasks. It creates an overload condition on their capacity, and that creates personal frustration and then reduces the organizational efficiency. And what we start seeing is this is because these tasks are not coordinated in a systemic approach to improvement. They're not done with the eye of managing resources effectively to make sure that we can consume the amount of work that's being tasked on that organization. So Taiichi Ohno in his Workplace Management made this statement: inefficient work standardization and rationalization. So standardization is standard work, rationalization is understanding how to categorize those things so we have a very simple set of work processes. They create waste, muda, so that's a lack of discipline. Inconsistency, this is the flow waste, mura. And unreasonableness, this is the rational waste, mori, in work procedures and work hours that will eventually lead to the production of defective products. So if we keep doing these things, we will not be able to have success with our customers. And he says these categories of waste can occur in all parts of an organization. However, in a briefing I gave to the Keidanran, which is the business management roundtable of Japan, CEOs of 400 leading companies, I made this comment: executive mori, waste associated with irrational decisions at the highest level of the organization, can create a state of systemic mura, waste in the flow of processes and systems, which generates localized muda, waste in workplace activities that the workers cannot eliminate. One of the reasons senior management is so enamored with the concept of lean is that it places the responsibility and ownership for waste reduction on the workers, and that most of the work and attention to detail has to be applied down there. But what happens is, if they are the ones creating muri that goes into cross-functional processes as mura and generates muda at the workplace, the workers cannot overcome the mandate because management said it's going to be this way. And that means that the workers become frustrated. So what do we mean by waste? So there's different categories of waste. People waste, people working at cross purposes, people working to correct problems, assigning to unnecessary or inappropriate tasks, people waiting, not doing anything, motion such as walking or reaching, processing non-optimally, or not using people's skills and abilities. And we can start to see that these happen because we don't communicate well, we don't have good training, we have high turnover, lack of engagement of the people in defining their tasks, lack of motivation in doing their work, poor layout of the workplace, and poor process design. Another type of waste are the process wastes. So we see unnecessary movement of people or process outputs, non-value adding steps, processing more earlier or faster than required by the next process step, idle time while waiting, review and rework, bottlenecks and lack of process balance, orders, papers, payments, waiting. And again, we can see this is due to lots of different activities and things happening. And we start seeing, hey, there's a lot of these reasons that are happening. Now, not every business will have all of the same reasons. We'll all have different reasons. So if we are talking about a software firm, we'll have one set of reasons. If we're talking about a legal system, we'll have a different set of reasons. If we're talking about a manufacturing environment, we'll have a different set of reasons. No matter what it is, we can still have the same types of process waste, but they arise because of different stimuli. And so if we talk about the information category of waste, we start seeing poor system design, missing master data, excessive data, formats and reports, actions required to recover missing data, handoffs between organizations creating disruptions, irrelevant data, inaccurate data, ineffective communication or information in either reporting or recording the data. And again, we see that there's many reasons here. Here, these tend to be very common to many different types of organizations. And so, again, finally, we see the asset category of waste. And here we see raw materials, finished goods inventory, work in process, slow-moving production, excessive fixed assets, assets in long cycle time. So what is an asset? May a hardware asset. It may be something like a dossier that's being processed through a chemical standards organization to say, does it have compliance with the rules and regulations? It may be a legal brief that's going through a legal system. It may be the milk that's going through a process. So how long that asset is taking to go through that process is actually reflecting on something that takes too much time. Now, again, these may be due to lots of different reasons. And so we have to think, what will it take to drive those to a better way? In Japan, responsibility is distributed. They consider there are 3 different types of distinctions that need to be made about things gone wrong. First is mistake. It happens within a person. Now, all people make mistakes. And Taiichi Ohno tells an interesting story about this, about thieves. He says a normal thief will maybe find something of value half the time they break into a house. A good thief maybe 70%, but nobody is 100% finding something good. So this is a mistake within a person. Now, if I pass my mistake on to the next step in the process, the next person, it becomes an error. So error proofing is about keeping mistakes within the individual. We detect our own mistakes and we self-correct them. That's what zero QC means. It means we don't need a second person to come and tell us we did something wrong. We catch it ourselves and we self-correct. So errors go all the way through the system, and at the end of our production line, there's some final check usually before we pass something on. Error proofing is keeping that from getting outside to the customer. So when it goes to the customer, it becomes a defect. It's outside the organization. And at each of these steps, it takes longer to repair these things. So workers are responsible for the quality of their work and improving the throughput process or improving the performance. They're also given decision rights to begin this examination of the production that might end up in halting it. So contrary to popular belief, they don't really stop production per se. What they do is they say, there's a problem here, and then they bring in the next level of supervision to make a choice. Is it because the person is not following the process, or is it because there's a problem with the process? And at that point in time, that person has to decide, what do we do? Do we stop production because we need to correct the process, or do we retrain this person and then keep the production process going? But the bias in the total production system is to keep the production process flowing. So workers are given the right tools in their job. They're trained in how to perform with those tools. They're given achievable, measurable goals to accomplish, and they're encouraged to participate in improvement to their process, to bring their ideas forward. And they also are encouraged to experiment under the direction of that supervisor with new ideas. So this is how Toyota assures that employees can be held accountable for the quality of their work. So I'd like you to go through a team reflection. And this is name your own waste. What are the wastes you see in the organization? And what we're going to do is we're going to take a look at them, and we're going to take a look at the different categories of people, process, information, and assets, and try to understand where is it in the organization. And then we're going to have some matrices that we use to complete. So how do you make waste reduction more relevant to your organization? So first we have the 4 categories. And think about, what do you see in terms of MORI waste in people, process, information, assets, MORA waste in each of the 4 categories, and MUDA waste in each of those 4 categories. Second is, what are the alternatives that we could do? So what is the different infrastructures we see? So MORI is cognitive decisions, flow of activities for MUDA is workplace discipline. And then how do we see these in GMBA 1, GMBA 2, and GMBA 3? And we'll note that there should be different types of MORI in each GMBA, different types of mura in each Gemba, and different types of muda in each Gemba. Third, how do we operationally define the wastes we see in our organization? So here is a type of waste that we can name, and then what category is it? Is it mori, mura, or muda? Where is the dominant level? Where is it occurring in the three organizations? How do we define that waste? And then what is our example of this that everyone in the company could understand, or at least the people working in that area can agree and understand? So this is what we need to think about. So organizations operate differently at each level of the organization. We have the three Gemba levels, and we see that each of those have their own customers, their own objectives and requirements. Performance is different. The Gemba work that's done in each of those is different, and therefore each responds to waste differently. So part of this waste naming exercise is to be able to be specific and clarify what do we really mean by it in ways people can understand and appreciate in their work. So let's talk about these three Gemba levels. So Gemba 1, the customer focus is in workers. Gemba 2, it's on external customers. Gemba 3, it's on the owners of the organizations. The activities are managing tasks, processes, or systems. And then the objectives are work productivity in Gemba 1, work priority or scheduling in Gemba 2, and work profitability in Gemba 3. The functions are performing and operating in Gemba 1. In Gemba 2, it's supervising, managing. Gemba 3, it's command and control. Performance focuses on flow efficiency, then productivity or resource efficiency. And then we see the performance approach is quality efficiency in Gemba 1, Gemba 2 is productivity, Gemba 3 is financial. So the quality mindset is right the first time for Gemba 1, Gemba 2 it's serve the customers, Gemba 3 it's get the business results. And finally, the Jisuiken team approach is work group or quality circle, if you will, in Gemba 1. It's a project or a program in Gemba 2, and in Gemba 3, it's a committee or a council. And so as we're looking at these things, we see that the nature of work, the implicit structure and things that are going on in the learning system will be different at each level of the Gemba. And therefore we have to think, how will we manage those differently as we're looking at continual improvement? One size does not fit all. And as a result, we have to manage them in different ways. Now, leaders and managers differ. So managers are managing Gemba 1 from Gemba 2 typically, and they have to know how. Leaders have to know why. What's motivating us to do things in a different way? So the managers are assuring we do the right thing or do things right, and the leaders are choosing what to do. So we do the right thing. So there's a very big difference in terms of what the actions are, the managers and the leaders, and we have to make sure that we are actually leading for continual improvement as well as managing for continual improvement. And as we look across this, we see there are different quality jobs and different tools in each one. So senior executives, cross-functional management, frontline workers. So frontline workers have to have discipline in their work. Their quality emphasis is on perfection, getting it right. The dominant type of waste they deal with is muda, and their improvement projects are either Nichijo Kanri, that is daily management system, Hinshitsu Kanri, that's quality control, Jisu Kanri, which is self-directed management or self-improvement, and they have different things. So self-inspection, 3S for workers, they have quality circles, and their coaches can be like at the green belt level. This is the lean enterprise organization resting point. This is the foundation. Cross-functional management, they're looking at harmony. This is this ability to work together. Their quality emphasis on flow and the type of waste they worry about is mura. So they have Kaizen Kanri projects. These are the continual improvement projects. They also have quality projects, Hinshitsu Kanri, and they also have Jisu Kanri, personal improvement projects. Here they will do things like a Gemba walk. They'll also have the 5S for managers, and this is something that is not widely taught, but we will talk about it in later trainings. And this is how management interrelates with the workers in their 3S systems. They have project teams, as we will formulate project teams for like Six Sigma projects, Lean projects, Green Belt projects, and so forth. And their coach is typically at a black belt level. Senior executives worry about agility. Do we have the ability to change and become what we need for the future? Their quality emphasis is on policy, the choices we make about where we're going, what we're doing, and why we're doing it. And the most dominant type of waste they create is Morty waste, bad decision making. So their improvement projects tend to be either Hoshin-Kanri, the organization-wide strategic planning projects, or personal improvement, Jisu-Kanri. Their methods are the presidential review, the S7 strategic methods, which is the techniques that support Hoshin-Kanri, cross-functional teams, which is how they manage these strategic change projects, and then their coach is the master black belts. So we start seeing that the roles and the competence of the people changes across the organization levels. So have we actually created an organization with competence and capability to change and exercise continual improvement at each level of the organization? So what is the leadership role in these processes? So leadership influences social and behavioral performance of people. So the good leader can persuade people to commit to working a certain way or achieving a particular objective by convincing them the benefits achieved will, by pursuing the common goal in collaboration with others, that is worthwhile to each person. So they have the obligation to set change, assign targets, provide resources, assign decision rights, develop their people, review progress, and steer activities. And these are the things that leaders need to do in the context of making sure strategic change projects deliver the strategic changes that they're looking for. So then the question is, what type of leader do you want to be? If you're going to be leading an organization in continual improvement, you can be constructive or you can be destructive. So constructive is a Kaizen leader. Kaizen means to improve for the better. Destructive means a Kai-Aku leader, which means performance for the worst. And that means that we are a destructive leader. We're not making things better, we're making things less. We're marginalizing performance. We're not getting the benefit out of the systems that we need to deal with. And so what we see is we're managing myopically, looking to just the financial results, and we don't look at what it takes to get people to be engaged in the process. And so maybe we're making things harder for the organization. And so we see we are become perhaps a little too concerned about our personal power and our abilities or our position, and not enough about the organization and its success. So I have a leadership reflection. Organizations require both leaders and followers. Often we serve in both roles according to different circumstances. So in some circumstances, maybe I'm a manager or a leader. Others, I may be a follower. So in what areas are you a leader? Whom do you lead? Why do you lead? In what areas are you a follower? Whom do you follow? In this capacity, what is your role relative to other followers? Do you have any roles where there's a conflict between leaders and followers? And what is the nature of that conflict? Is it personal or systemic? What are the reasons that the conflict hasn't been resolved? And how is it a quality conflict? In other words, a conflict that's creating good or bad for the organization as a whole. So to answer that, we have to ask the question, what do we mean by quality? So quality is, in a transcendental definition, this means it applies to anything. It's the relentless pursuit of goodness, coupled tightly with the persistence avoidance of badness. And if we operationalize this in the reality of the world we live in, the digital world and the world of people, what we see is that this definition has three sub-definitions. So one is product quality, another is service quality, another is process quality. And if we look at each of those, we can take a look and understand them differently. So if I take a look at product quality, it's fitness for use by the customer in the intended application and the actual environment. So the actual entity is product requirements, it's got reliable results, it's judged by the customers, it's fault-free, and it's cost-effective. So how would you challenge your organization to improve and obtain excellence if that is your set of goals. How about if you're a service organization? Here it's consistent delivery of desired service level over an extended period of time across all locations. Everybody gets the same experience in service. So if you go to one Ritz-Carlton hotel, it's the same service you would get at all Ritz-Carlton hotels. One McDonald's, it's the same food you would get served to you at all. So here we're looking at optimizing the actual experience. So that's the service requirements. Again, reliable results, customers making the judge. It should be mistake-free and also cost-effective. And again, the question is, how will you challenge your organization to improve in that sort of service definition of quality? And if we're talking about the process application, we're talking about maximizing the level of productivity relative to customer demand with minimal waste, loss, or inefficiencies. So this is the actual activity. It's, again, process requirements we have. We have reliable results, customer judge, waste and loss-free operations. And again, the question is, how will you challenge your organization to move forward there? What needs to be eliminated? The bad and the ugly. So waste must be eliminated from the executive suite. No more bad decisions. No more wasted capital investments. Strategic choices that are burdened by excessive risk or investments in technology that do not offer real benefits. Financial systems must become more transparent so allocations to overhead are not used to cover up waste and losses or distort internal value systems. And the workforce must be developed so knowledge held by elder workers is not lost, but becomes part of the learning that's embedded as standard work in all appropriate operational systems. So, defining quality by ourselves. So, what do you want quality to mean for your organization? Again, another exercise that you can walk through to try to understand, how do we make this work for us? Quality is not just about something in a product. It's not just about the way a process works. It's about how we work together, the level of goodness in our collaboration, and then how do we operationalize that definition for everybody? So we have two things we need to do. One is define quality, what do we mean? And then second is, how do we operationalize it? How will we know it when we see it? Because this is what people are actually doing. So again, thank you very much for having been through this. This is a long module on waste management, waste elimination, if you will. Lots of things to think about and several exercises to do. Hopefully you'll find the time to get together with your team to do these. Thank you very much.